They say that revenge is a dish best served cold, but when I saw Sarah laughing with the girl she'd been seeing behind my back for months, it felt like fire was coursing through my veins. We were standing in the middle of a crowded campus courtyard, the autumn wind biting at my face, but nothing hurt as much as the casual way she tucked a strand of hair behind that girl's ear, the same way she used to do for me. I stood there, clutching my leather-bound notebook to my chest, my green eyes stinging. My red hair, usually neatly pinned back, was starting to fray in the wind, much like my sanity. Sarah didn't even have the decency to look guilty when she saw me. She just gave me a small, pitying smirk and walked away. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't just be the sad ex. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she lost. I wanted to be a constant, unshakable shadow in her life. 2 weeks later, the opportunity fell right into my lap. My friend Maya told me over a latte at our favorite dimly lit, wood-paneled cafe that Sarah's father had just remarried. The news wasn't the shock. The shock was who he had married into. He had married a wealthy woman from out of state, and she had a daughter my age, a stepsister for Sarah. Her name was Claire. "She's starting at our university next week," Maya whispered, leaning across the mahogany table. Sarah is obsessed with her family's new image. She wants everything to be perfect. She's already bragging about how pure and elegant her new sister is. A plan began to form in my mind, dark and intricate. If I could get close to Claire, if I could become her best friend, her confidant, the person she spent every waking hour with, Sarah would never be able to escape me. Every family dinner, every holiday, every photo, I would be there. I would be the best friend of the sister she so desperately wanted to impress. I would be the ghost at her banquet. The following Monday, I waited near the east wing of the library, the place where the architecture students, Claire's major, usually gathered. I had carefully curated my look. I wore a crisp white button-down under a dark chocolate wool vest, pleated charcoal trousers, and my favorite vintage loafers. I looked every bit the serious academic intellectual. I wanted to look like someone reliable, someone safe. Then, I saw her. Claire was like a breath of fresh air in a room full of stale dust. She had hair the color of moonlight, a stunning, shimmering platinum blonde that fell in soft waves to her waist. She was wearing a high-necked, oversized lavender sweater that looked as soft as a cloud, and her eyes were a gentle, curious blue. She looked lost, clutching a heavy stack of textbooks and a campus map that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. This was it. "Do you need some help with those?" I asked, stepping out from the shadows of the bookshelves. I made sure my voice was low, steady, and kind. She jumped slightly, her blue eyes wide, but when she saw me, she let out a breath of relief. "Oh, thank goodness. I'm looking for the advanced drafting lab, but I think I've walked in a circle 3 times now. It's a labyrinth in here," I said with a small, practiced smile. "I'm uni. I'm headed that way, actually. Why don't I give you a hand?" As we walked through the grand, stone-arched hallways of the university, I felt a strange flicker of something I couldn't quite name. Claire didn't talk like Sarah. There was no sharp edge to her words, no hidden agenda. She talked about how much she loved the way the light hit the old stained glass in the cathedral, and how she was nervous about making friends in a new city. My stepsister, Sarah, told me everyone here was a bit snobbish, Claire said, looking at me with a shy smile. "But you're so nice, Junie. I'm glad you found me." I felt a tiny prick of guilt, but I pushed it down. "Remember what Sarah did," I told myself. "Remember the cheating. Remember the lies. Sarah and I have history," I said vaguely. "But don't worry about her. I'll make sure you settle in just fine." Over the next month, I became Claire's shadow. I took her to the best hidden spots in the city, places Sarah never cared for, We spent hours in an old botanical garden, surrounded by rare ferns and the scent of damp earth. I watched Claire sketch the plants, her platinum hair catching the sunlight through the glass roof. She looked so peaceful, so genuinely happy to be there with me. I wore my usual dark academia layers, forest green sweaters and tweed blazers, and she was always in her pastels, a soft pink or a mint green sweater that made her look like a painting. One afternoon, we were sitting on a stone bench in the garden, the air thick with the smell of blooming jasmine. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder, her hair smelling like vanilla and rain. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Junie," she whispered. "Sarah is always so busy with her girlfriend and her parties. She doesn't really have time for me. But you make me feel like I actually belong here." I looked down at her, at the trust in her eyes, and for a moment, the revenge felt like ash in my mouth. I was using this girl. I was using her kindness as a weapon against someone else. But then, I saw Sarah. She was walking along the path with her girlfriend, their fingers intertwined. Sarah stopped dead when she saw us. Her face went pale, her eyes darting from me to Claire, who was still leaning comfortably against me. The shock and the immediate flash of jealousy in Sarah's eyes were exactly what I had wanted. "Claire," Sarah called out, her voice tight. "What are you doing here? And with her?" Claire sat up, smiling brightly. "Sarah, you know Uni? She's been showing me the city. She's my best friend." The word best friend twisted something in my gut. Sarah looked like she wanted to scream. She knew exactly what I was doing, but she couldn't say a word without admitting our past to Claire. She had to stand there and watch as I reached out and gently tucked a stray blonde hair behind Claire's ear, the same gesture she had used to break my heart. "We were just about to head to a gallery opening," I said, my voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You're welcome to join us, Sarah. Oh, but I forgot. You always found galleries boring, didn't you?" Sarah's grip on her girlfriend's hand tightened until her knuckles were white. "Come on, let's go," she hissed to her partner, turning on her heel and storming away. Victory should have tasted sweet. I had finally gotten under her skin. I had finally made her feel the insecurity she had forced on me. But as I looked back at Claire, she was staring at the space where Sarah had been, her expression clouded with confusion. "She seemed upset," Claire muttered. "Does she really hate you that much, Uni? What happened between you two?" I looked into those innocent blue eyes, and for the first time, I couldn't find a lie. "It was a long time ago, Claire. It doesn't matter now." But it did matter. As we walked out of the garden, the autumn leaves crunching under our feet, I realized that the lines were beginning to blur. Every time Claire laughed, every time she shared a secret with me, every time she wore a new pastel sweater, just because I mentioned I liked the color, it wasn't about Sarah anymore. We went to a small, independent cinema that evening to watch an old black and white film. The theater was cold, and Claire shivered beside me. Without thinking, I took off my heavy wool blazer and draped it over her shoulders. She curled into it, the dark fabric a stark contrast to her platinum hair. "You're always taking care of me," she whispered as the opening credits rolled. She reached out and took my hand, her fingers small and warm against mine. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My heart was thudding against my ribs, not with the cold adrenaline of revenge, but with a terrifying new warmth. I looked at our joined hands and felt a wave of nausea. I was a monster. I was a liar. And I was starting to fall in love with the girl I was supposed to be using. The week that followed was a blur of internal conflict. I tried to distance myself, but Claire was everywhere. She'd leave a coffee on my desk before my morning lectures. She'd send me photos of buildings she thought I'd like. She invited me to a family dinner at the Sterling estate, Sarah's house. "It's my mom's birthday," Claire said, her voice hopeful over the phone. "Please come, Junie. I don't think I can handle a whole night of Sarah and my stepdad alone. You're my safety net." I knew I should say no. Going to Sarah's house was the ultimate move in my revenge plan, the final blow. But hearing the vulnerability in Claire's voice, I realized I wasn't going for revenge anymore. I was going because she asked me to. When I arrived at the estate, the grand stone house was lit up like a fortress. I wore my best dark academia attire, a midnight blue velvet blazer, and a crisp silk tie. I felt like a soldier going into battle, but when Claire opened the door, all my defenses melted. She was wearing a soft, cream-colored dress with a high lace collar, her platinum hair pinned back with a pearl clip. "You came," she breathed, her face lighting up. She took my hand and led me into the dining room. Sarah was already there, standing by the fireplace. When she saw me, her glass nearly slipped from her hand. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Throughout dinner, I felt Sarah's burning gaze on me, but I didn't look at her once. I was too busy watching Claire. I watched the way she navigated the stiff, formal conversation, the way she tried so hard to make everyone happy, and the way her eyes sought mine every time she felt overwhelmed. I realized then that Sarah didn't deserve a girl like Claire, and I realized that I didn't deserve her either. After dinner, Claire led me out to the balcony overlooking the dark, manicured gardens. The air was freezing, but the stars were brilliant. Tonight was a lot, Claire said, leaning against the cold stone railing. "Thank you for being here, Junie. I don't know why Sarah is so hostile toward you, but I don't care. You're the best person I know." She turned to me, the moonlight silvering her hair. She looked so pure, so untainted by the bitterness that had consumed my life. I felt a tear prick my eye. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to scream that I was a liar, that I had only met her to hurt her sister. But before I could speak, she leaned in. She didn't kiss me. She just pressed her forehead against mine, her breath hitching. "I think I'm falling for you, Uni," she whispered. "Is that okay?" I closed my eyes, the guilt finally shattering my heart into 1,000 pieces. "Claire, Suddenly, the French doors behind us swung open. It was Sarah. She looked disheveled, her face twisted with a mixture of rage and desperation. "Get away from her, Claire," Sarah screamed, her voice echoing across the garden. "She's using you. Do you really think someone like her would just happen to meet you at the library? She's my ex, Claire. She's only here to get back at me." The world seemed to stop. I felt Claire stiffen against me, her breath hitching in a way that sounded like a sob. She slowly pulled back, her blue eyes wide with a dawning, horrific realization. "Junie?" Claire whispered, her voice trembling. Is she telling the truth?" I looked at Sarah, who was smirking now, a cruel, triumphant glint in her eyes. Then I looked at Claire. The soft, pastel-colored world we had built over the last month was crumbling around us. I wanted to lie. I wanted to save myself. But as I looked at the tears welling in Claire's eyes, I knew I couldn't hurt her anymore. "Yes," I whispered, the word feeling like lead in my throat. "It started that way. Claire, I'm so sorry." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Claire looked at me like she didn't recognize me, like I was a stranger wearing the face of her best friend. Without a word, she turned and ran back into the house, her cream-colored dress disappearing into the light. Sarah stepped onto the balcony, crossing her arms. "I told you, Junie. You can't win. You're just as bad as I am." I looked at the girl I used to love, the girl I had wasted months trying to hurt. She looked small. She looked ugly. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice cold and hollow. "I'm much worse. Because I broke the heart of the only person who actually cared about me. I walked past her, leaving the grand house and the bitter memories behind. I walked into the dark, cold night, the weight of my mistakes pressing down on me. I had won my revenge. I had made Sarah miserable. But as I stood alone under the vast, uncaring stars, I realized I had lost the only thing that actually mattered. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I stopped going to my favorite cafes. I stopped wearing my blazers and vests, choosing instead to hide in heavy coats and keep my head down. The university campus, which used to feel like my kingdom, now felt like a graveyard. Everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts. I saw the library where I first lied to her. I saw the stone bench where I first felt my heart shift. I sent Claire dozens of messages. I left flowers at her drafting lab. I even tried to wait for her outside her apartment. But every time I saw that shock of platinum blonde hair in the distance, I froze. How could I face her? What could I possibly say that would make up for the fact that her entire reality had been a chess move in my petty game? Maya tried to cheer me up, but even she looked at me with a certain level of disappointment. "You went too far, Uni," she said, as we sat in a quiet park, the trees now bare and skeletal. "You used someone's heart as a shield. That's not dark academia. That's just dark." "I know," I whispered, staring at my boots. "I know." One evening, about 2 weeks after the disaster at the Sterling estate, I found myself walking toward the botanical garden. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through my clothes. The garden was closed, but I knew the spot where the fence was low. I needed to be where it had all felt real. I sat on our bench, the stone freezing beneath me. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the smell of her vanilla perfume. "I figured I'd find you here," I gasped, spinning around. Sarah was standing there, holding an expensive black umbrella. She wasn't smirking anymore. She looked tired. "What do you want, Sarah?" I snapped, my voice cracking. "Haven't you done enough?" "I'm not here to fight," she said, stepping closer. "Believe it or not, I actually care about my sister. She hasn't eaten properly in days. She's stopped drawing. She just sits in her room staring at that stupid blazer you gave her." My heart squeezed. "She still has it. She won't let anyone touch it," Sarah sighed. "Look, Junie, I'm a bitch. I know that. I cheated on you because I was bored and selfish. But Claire, she's different. She actually believed in you. She told me once that you were the first person who saw her for who she was, not just as a sterling addition." Sarah looked at me, her expression complicated. "I told her the truth because I wanted to hurt you, but seeing her like this, it's not worth it. If you actually give a damn about her, go to the bridge at the old park. She goes there every night at 8 to watch the water. She says it's the only place quiet enough to think." I stared at Sarah, stunned. "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah shrugged, turning to leave. "Because I'm tired of being the villain in everyone's story, and because she deserves better than both of us. Don't blow it, Uni." I didn't wait. I ran. I ran through the rain, my lungs burning, my loafers slipping on the wet pavement. I reached the old park, just as the clock tower struck 8. The park was empty, the Victorian-style lampposts casting long, orange shadows on the path. Then, I saw her. Claire was standing in the middle of the stone bridge, leaning over the railing. She was wearing a pale blue coat, her platinum hair whipped around by the wind like a silk banner. She looked so small, so fragile against the backdrop of the dark, rushing river. I slowed down, my heart hammering in my ears. I walked toward her, my footsteps echoing on the stone. She didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders tense. "I told you to leave me alone, Sarah," she said, her voice thick with tears. "It's not Sarah," I said softly. Claire froze. She slowly turned around, her face pale and red-rimmed from crying. When she saw me, soaked to the bone, my red hair plastered to my forehead, my green eyes pleading, she let out a small, broken sob. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "Haven't you taken enough from me?" "I'm here because I'm a fool," I said, stepping closer, though I made sure to keep a respectful distance. I'm here because I spent my whole life thinking that being smart meant being cold. I thought that if I could control the board, I couldn't get hurt. I used you, Claire. I lied to you, and there is no excuse for it. Claire looked away, staring at the dark water. It was all a lie, wasn't it? The garden, the cinema, the way you looked at me. It was all just to make Sarah jealous. No, I said, my voice desperate. In the beginning, yes. I wanted her to see us. I wanted her to feel what I felt. Но клянусь тебе, Клэр, клянусь всем, что у меня есть. Это изменилось. Я не знаю, когда именно, но в какой-то момент я перестала искать глазами Сару. Я начала искать только тебя. Я начала замечать, как ты прикусываешь губу, когда рисуешь. Я начала замечать, как ты всегда выбираешь самые светлые цвета, потому что видишь в мире только хорошее. I took another step. The blazer, the cinema, the way I held your hand. That wasn't for Sarah. She wasn't even there. I did those things because I couldn't help myself. I fell in love with you, Claire, not as a weapon, but as the most beautiful person I've ever known. Claire finally looked at me, her blue eyes searching mine. The rain was pouring down now, soaking both of us, but neither of us moved. How do I know this isn't another move? She asked, her voice trembling. How do I know you're not just saying this to win the game? There is no game anymore, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my phone. I handed it to her. That's my phone. My messages, my photos, everything. I've deleted Sarah's number. I've deleted every photo of her. The only thing left in there is you. Claire didn't take the phone. She just looked at me, her expression softening. You're a mess, Junie. I am. I laughed breathlessly, tears finally mixing with the rain on my face. I'm a miserable, selfish mess, but I'm a mess that loves you. If you want me to leave, I will. I'll transfer schools. I'll disappear, but I couldn't let you think that what we had wasn't real to me. Claire stayed silent for a long time. The only sound was the rushing of the river and the wind in the trees. Then slowly, she walked toward me. She stopped right in front of me, her pale blue coat brushing against my soaked wool coat. She reached up and wiped a stray tear from my cheek. Sarah told me everything, she whispered. She told me why she did it, and she told me that you were a better person than you thought you were. She said that? I asked, stunned. Claire nodded. She's still a bitch, but she was right about one thing. You do look at me like I'm the only person in the world. She looked up at me, her moonlight blonde hair shimmering even in the dark. I should hate you, Uni. My head tells me to run as far away from you as possible. And what does your heart say? I whispered. Claire leaned in, her breath warm against my cold skin. My heart says that I've never felt more alive than when I'm with the girl in the tweed blazer. She reached out and took my hand, interlacing our fingers, just like she had in the cinema. I don't want revenge, Junie. I don't want to be a weapon. I just want to be Claire. And I want you to be the Junie I met in the library. I can do that, I breathed. I promise. I leaned down, my heart finally finding its rhythm. I stopped just inches from her lips, giving her every chance to turn away. But Claire didn't move. She leaned in, closing the gap. The kiss was soft, hesitant, and tasted of the cool autumn rain. It wasn't the fiery, desperate kiss of a movie. It was a quiet, sacred promise. In that moment, the bitterness of the past, the cheating, the lies, and the revenge all faded away. There was no Sarah. There was no Sterling estate. There was just the two of us, standing on a bridge in the rain, two broken people choosing to heal together. When we finally pulled apart, Claire was smiling, a real, bright smile that lit up the dark park. So, she said, tucking her hair behind her ear, no more plans? No more plans, I promised, pulling her into a hug. From now on, I'm just your best friend, and hopefully, something more. I think something more sounds perfect, she whispered into my chest. We walked out of the park together. Our hands joined. The rain didn't feel cold anymore. The world didn't feel dark. I had set out to break a heart to satisfy my own pride, but instead, I had found the one person who could make me whole. Sarah had her revenge, and I had my lesson. But most importantly, I had Claire. As we reached the street, a car drove past, its headlights illuminating us for a brief second. I looked at our reflection in a shop window, the girl in the dark academia coat, and the girl in the pastel blue coat. We looked like opposites, like two worlds that shouldn't have met. Но когда я посмотрела на наши переплетенные пальцы, я поняла, что это самая красивая картина, которую я когда-либо видела. Revenge was a dish best served cold, they said. But love was the only thing that could keep you warm in the rain.